What's going on, guys? It's Wally. Today we're going to be finding out if it's possible to go undrafted in Road to the Show. Now, I'm sure you're probably asking yourself, why would you want to go undrafted in this mode? Well, if you want to have the toughest challenge possible, then you want to make sure that you start as low on that prospect list as possible. And to be able to do that, you want to make sure that you go undrafted or have the lowest possible draft pick that you can get. Today, we're going to find out how to do that. Now, obviously, you have three different options that you can pick as your player. That's position player, a pitcher, and of course, a two-way player. Now, I'm sure all three of them have different parameters in terms of where you can get drafted because obviously certain teams want to take pitchers, certain teams are looking for hitters. I'm not quite sure which one's going to have the lower draft pick, but obviously at the end of this video, we're going to find out. So we're going to start with the position player, go into the pitcher, and then try a two-way player, see how horrible we can do in our high school games, the combine, etc., and also see what we can do to get as low of a draft pick as possible. But before we get into the video, if you guys are new here, just haven't yet, make sure to go down and hit the subscribe button. If you guys do enjoy this video, please make sure to drop a like too. I really appreciate it. But let's get into this. Let's select a position player. Now, honestly, this would be really tough to go through every single one of these. So I think what we're going to end up doing is probably go catcher, first base, second base because second base shortstop, and then one of the positions in the outfield. We'll kind of try to see which one might be able to get us a lower draft pick or see if any of them will make us go undrafted. So let's start with the catcher and let's see what we can do to end up getting as low as possible. And of course, since we want to be as low of an overall as possible as well, we're just going to skip putting any of these skill points into any of these attributes. So let's end up saving these for later. Not that we're going to end up using them, but let's end up going with that. And let's start our career. And let's make sure that it gets off to a rocky start. I figure if we just sit here and strike out every single at bat and make an error every single time that we're in the field, I think that might get us a little lower on that list, and we can get that projected round just down a little bit more. And there we go. We're going to make sure, oh shoot, we need to get, oh, I can't believe we didn't get to that one. Damn it. But despite us having a really bad game, we still ended up winning. Now, question is there actually going to be a college coach that wants to come talk to us after striking out 3 times? And it looks like that's going to be Cal State Fullerton, huh? Now, I'm actually kind of regretting going to Cal State Fullerton in our actual main series, but either way, it looks like they're still interested despite the fact that we went 0 for 3 and had horrible plays in the field. And of course, the Miami Marlins are jumping right on board too. And after that game, we're looking at a projected round of 9-20 right now. The question is, how much lower is that going to get as we progress through these playoff games? Hopefully we can get knocked out pretty quickly and we'll have a bad game to boot, but we'll figure it out once we actually get into the playoffs. And despite the fact that we did almost win the state championship, we still ended up going 0 for 10 with 10 strikeouts and made numerous errors in the field. So thankfully that means our draft stock is dropping a little bit, and hopefully that means that we're going to be below the 20th round. But unfortunately that projection is still at 9-20. I'm really hoping that if we have a really bad combine, that maybe it'll drop a little bit more. Not sure if going to college is really going to affect it. Maybe it'll make us go up a little bit, but we'll definitely find out after this. And honestly, I think it's going to be really interesting to see if the combine can actually hurt our draft stock or if it can only help it. We'll definitely see as we end up swinging at pretty much every single pitch and missing, and then getting into the game, and again, doing exactly what we did in high school, and that is absolutely nothing. And while I know this is a little bit boring to see us miss on every single pitch and do horrible in the field, wait until we get to pitching. That's going to be a lot of fun, trust me. And honestly, I totally forgot that there would be catcher drills too. We have 4 chances to do something, and oh no, that's not where we wanted to have the glove. No, that means our grade's going to be an F. And thankfully, there are only 4 reps that we really have to go through. And that means that we're going to be good right here, and that is going to be our 2nd consecutive F. I don't know why that guy was dapping us up, because we did horrible. And for some reason, TCU's interested in us now. I don't understand why, but go right ahead. Now, the Washington Nationals, I definitely understand, but TCU? And even though it didn't necessarily drop our draft stock, that did narrow it down a little bit lower. So we are still 17-20, which means obviously we're going to be going on that lower end. But if we can get through these games and again have horrible games, I'm hoping that 20 is going to drop a bit more. But after 13 strikeouts in those 3 games in the combine, our projected round has not changed. So it looks like potentially, at least for the catcher, the minimum projected round is 20. The question is, where do we get drafted in that range of 17-20? It's going to be interesting to see where we go because, again, we haven't gotten a lot of interest from a lot of ball clubs. even colleges. I think it's just 2 right now. So we're going to have to pick one of them. We're probably going to go to college just to see if that affects the draft stock at all. But if it doesn't go below what the minimum was on this one, I think for the future positions, we're just going to choose not to go to college. We're just going to go to the pros and see what that final draft position is going to be. But now, moment of truth for the catcher. Where do we get drafted and by whom? It's going to be interesting to see what position actually yields the lowest draft position. But I'm not sure if it's going to be catcher, if it's between the 17th and the 20th round. And it looks like it is going to be the 18th round to the Marlins. Again, one of the few teams that were interested in us. We had the worst combine, worst high school playoffs, but somehow we got drafted in the 18th round. But as we said, we are going to end up going to college, and we're going to see if that affects the draft stock at all. Hopefully it's not going to be a positive thing. Hopefully it'll end up sending us in the opposite direction, but again, we'll see what ends up happening after the College World Series. My hope is that we only end up playing 2 games in this because I'd really like to get out of here as quick as possible, and if we don't even make it to the College Baseball Championship, maybe we're going to get lesser looks from other ball clubs. But even if we do end up winning a little bit, striking out every single at-bat and having errors in the field, hopefully will end up driving us down a bit. Well, it looks like we do win pretty handily. That's upsetting, but maybe having more strikeouts might affect it a little bit more. We'll see. But somehow we ended up getting interest from 3 teams after that game. We just struck out a bunch and made errors in the field. I don't get it. The good news is we end up losing the next game and add another 4 strikeouts. And after this out right here, that's going to be 5 strikeouts in this game as we end up losing to the Bruins, which means that our college baseball championship hopes are now dashed. And that's great because that means that hopefully we'll end up getting a lower projected round. But unfortunately, it looks like college is only going to help you because despite the fact that we struck out every single time we were up the bat and had an error anytime that we were really kind of controlling him in the field, we still go up to 13 or 14. And don't get me wrong, it makes sense. I totally understand the logic behind it, but that also means going forward with all the other positions, we're not going to be going to college. We're going to get through high school and see what the lowest round is that we can end up getting. But it's going to be interesting to see if we actually do go between the 13th and the 14th round. I'm sure they don't toy around with that. I'm sure that probably is where we're going to go. And it looks like we're going to end up going in the 14th round to my favorite team. Let's go. That's awesome. But again, just proves that when you go to college, for the most part, you're always going to end up improving your draft stock. Now, if you have a fantastic high school career and a really horrible college career, that might be a different story. But again, for the way that we end up playing this, it looks like it only went up. So, it looks like at least for a catcher, the lowest round that you're going to be able to go is potentially 20. We went in the 18th round, but again, it looked like that lower end of the range is going to be down at 20. So now that we know how it's going to work, I'm going to continue to go through it with a corner infielder, a middle infielder, and an outfielder as well. And we're going to see if we can end up getting a lower draft position and see which one ends up being the worst. Now, I'm not really going to end up showing any gameplay of that because you guys already know how it's going to go. We're going to swing and miss at every pitch, and we're going to create errors in the field. So I'm going to show you where we end up after high school and also after the combine and see where we end up getting drafted and by whom. So we're going to continue this in that order. We'll probably end up going first base, shortstop, and then probably center field as well. And we can kind of judge from there what other corner infielders, outfielders, and middle infielders are like as well. And just to keep things even, we're going to do the same thing, not spend any skill points, keep us as low overall as possible. Now, before we do get into the results, I want to point out that Fullerton was still the one school to come talk to us after having a really bad game. So I'm going to see what it's like with the other players as well. And it's going to be interesting to see if they're always going to be the school to come after us after we have a bad game. But after losing in the state championship again, we're still projected 9-20, so this might actually be the lowest that we can go, but again, we're still going to test all the other positions too. And after the combine, it looks like our projected round is 17-20, just like it was for the catcher. So if I'm not mistaken, it looks like what you end up doing in high school is going to end up setting your range, and the combine looks like it's going to narrow down to about that like 4-round range right there, like you see with the 17-20. So I could be mistaken. It's possible that the combine could improve your draft stock over what you end up getting after high school, but by the looks of it, it looks like it's just going to narrow it down. And maybe that's something we test in another video, but just a little observation. So when all was said and done, not only were the only 2 schools to actually offer us a scholarship being Fullerton and TCU, just like it was with the catcher, but also we're going to see that we end up going in the draft in the 18th round yet again to the Cincinnati Reds. Different team, but still the same round. And after high school, our shortstop ended in the same spot, projected round 9-20th. I have a feeling that once we end up going through this combine, we're going to end up being 17th through the 20th again. But we'll go through it and we'll see what ends up happening. And the other thing I wanted to look at too were the colleges. And again, just like the other two positions, Fullerton was the only school that had any interest in us. But after the combine, we're in the same exact spot, 17th to 20th. So what I think we're going to do for the outfielder is actually skip the combine and see if that actually makes a difference too. But we do need to see where we end up getting drafted and also what franchise we're going to end up going to too. And it looks like we're going to the Brewers in the 18th round. So I don't know if you can necessarily go below the 18th round. It's possible that it might just be, I guess, a dice roll or a coin toss or something like that for who ends up getting you or what round you end up going in. But every single one of ours has been in the 18th round. But for the 4th time in a row, we're projected between the 9th and the 20th round. Now, again, we're going to end up not going to the combine this time. We're going to reject that offer and see if that ends up affecting it at all, too. And it doesn't look like it actually affects it much. We're still projected between the 17th and the 20th rounds. I guess it's kind of equivalent to going out there and striking out 15 times and making no plays in the field. But still, we'll see. Maybe this will actually put us on the bottom end of that range instead of being in the 18th round. And also, if you didn't see before, Fullerton was the only school to have any interest in us. Go figure. And surprisingly enough, it actually did kind of make a little bit of a difference. I don't know if that was just, a low roll on it in terms of like RNG, but still, we went in the 20th round to the Padres. So we do end up kind of finding out potentially that not going to the combine is going to put you on that lower end of the range. But let's see if it makes a difference if we're a pitcher or not. Now, just like the position players, we're not going to be putting any skill points into any of the other attributes here. So we're just going to go into high school without any of those additional attribute points. But we're going to do things a little bit differently than we did with the position players. Obviously, that is going to be the case because it's not like we're in the batter's box. We just need to get out of this game with as bad of a stat line as possible. Now, there are 3 options that we can go with here. First is to just go and just throw meatballs right down the middle. Downside is because of the nature of this game and baseball in general, it's possible that they'd still strike out, and that obviously would reflect pretty well on us. We don't want that. The other option is to just walk a bunch of guys in a row. It's another possibility too, but honestly, going out there and walking a guy in 4 pitches time and time again might get a little boring. So, let's go the opposite route. And let's just hit guys. Obviously, there are a couple times where they'll end up getting out of the way, but for the most part, as long as we just kind of throw it inside, we should end up hitting them at some point. And I'm kind of curious to see how many batters we have to hit before we get ejected from this game. And we've already had 1, and we're also going to have number 2 right here as well. We got number 3, and now we got the bases loaded. There was number 4, and now we got a run to come in. We got 4 now. Let's see how long it takes for Coach to take us out, though. There's 5, there's 6, 7, 8, we got 9, and now 10. I'm surprised Coach hasn't taken us out yet, because that is a lot. You would think that maybe they would eject us at this point, especially after hitting 11 guys in a row. I mean, now we've pretty much given up 10 runs, all on hit by pitches, and we're still in the game. I don't think we're winning state. And it looks like this senior day is going to be for all those graduates who want to go and be pre-med at school, because they're going to need a lot of them to be able to treat every single player on this team after being hit like 4 or 5 times. We also just got the message that we are starting to get tired. So that means I'm sure once we end up wearing down and we get to a certain amount of pitches, that we're going to end up getting taken out. It's just crazy that it's not based off of how many runs we've given up. It's mostly just off of our energy. And after 43 runs and I don't even know how many hit by pitches, Coach finally takes us out of the game. So 43 runs, we have an infinite ERA, but thankfully we haven't given up a base hit. But at the same time though, we walked a lot of guys, hit a lot of guys, and hopefully that means that we're going to get very, very little interest. But go figure, look who wants to talk to us. It's the recruiting coordinator, Cal State Fullerton, for the 5th time in a row. And not just Fullerton, but we also got TCU to be interested. And kind of as expected, projected 9th through 20th round. So right now, at least my hypothesis is you're never going to go below the 20th round in Road to the Show. But that's not to say that we're going to stop trying, because we got one more game here in high school, and that is the state championship. Now, why you want to leave this game in our hands after seeing what you saw in that first one? I'm not sure, because we're picking up right where we left off with hitting guys. By the way, I do feel the need to say this, though, is if you are still playing baseball right now, obviously you don't want to ever hit a batter, but please never purposely throw at a batter. This is obviously for educational purposes only, so again, please don't actually do this in real life. And this game followed a very similar pattern as the last one, where we ended up giving up over 40 runs on just over 80 pitches. So it looks like how you do in high school isn't going to depend on how many runs you give up necessarily. It depends on the energy you have when you're out on the mound. So again, as expected, projected round 9 through 20 yet again. We are going to end up going through the combine this time. We'll end up not going through the combine as a relief pitcher just to kind of get both sides of it. But again, we'll go through this one. We'll see what ends up happening. But again, I'm expecting it to be 17th through the 20th round. I will say though, if you do want to make sure that you have an option for what college you go to, it looks like pitching is really going to be the best option. Because as you saw with the hitting, even though we were terrible throughout all those games, we only had Fullerton that ended up being interested. But as you saw with the pitcher, we had a horrible game too. In fact, 2 of them. And we had interest from Fullerton and TCU. So, again, something we are going to, or something you should definitely expect if you end up doing Road to the Show and you want to get drafted as low as possible. So in this combine, we do have 9 pitches, and we're going to make sure that we stay as far away from the target as possible. So let's go with those bad pitches, and let's see what we can do to end up getting an F for our grade, and let's see if we can do our best to kind of lower our draft stock a little bit too. Now I will say the other thing too is it seems like as a pitcher you're going to get more interest from ball clubs as well, because we already have more from professional ball clubs as a pitcher than we did as a hitter, and we haven't really done that much. Now the good news is, as a starter in the combine, I think that means that we're only going to be playing 1 game, and I'm really curious to see if it's going to follow the same type of path that we saw in high school, where it's going to be how much energy we have and not how many runs we give up. Because we're just going to go out here and just plunk as many guys as possible and see what we can do to get a lot of guys to score just because they got hit by pitch. Now, it does feel like it's following kind of the same pattern, where it's not going to be how many runs you end up giving up. It's going to depend on how tired you get. And it makes sense because in the field and in the batter's box, you have plenty of opportunities to kind of prove yourself. You know, 1 bad at bat isn't going to dictate everything else that you do, whereas 1 bad game on the mound really could dictate everything, because you're not really going to get many more chances. So I understand why they keep you in, even if you're giving up a bunch of runs. But still, 26 runs without giving up an out is a little ridiculous, so I'm surprised that they don't take you out anyways. But after 43 runs, dozens of hit by pitches later, and numerous times through the order, he's finally taken us out of the game. But again, I am expecting us to be around the 17th through the 20th round again. And unsurprisingly enough, that is exactly where we are. Now, question is, are we going to be in the 18th round again for being in the combine, or do we go a little bit lower? But here's the moment of truth. What round are we going in? Is the combine actually going to make a difference? And it looks like it actually might. 18th round to the Chicago White Sox. So, again, we'll end up testing it with the relief pitcher not going to the combine, but it looks like every time we've gone to the combine and had really horrible games in high school and in the combine, we still went in the 18th round, and the one time that we didn't go to the combine, we were the 20th. So again, we'll end up seeing what happens with the relief pitcher. Now, before we actually see our projection and where we inevitably end up going, we kind of run into a little bit of a problem, because we've given up 65 runs, we're at 115 pitches, and we have not been taken out of this game. So that leads me to believe we're the only person on this team that actually is able to pitch right now. So what I've opted to do is actually just throw balls right down the middle and just try to get some outs here just so we can get out of it. Because at this point, look, we've given up so many runs and hit so many batters that even if we get 3 outs right here, who the hell's going to want to take us? Well, obviously Cal State Fullerton does, because they came and approached us after this game again. Apparently Fullerton is one of the worst colleges in this game. And now I really am actually second-guessing my Fullerton choice in the main series. But it's neither here nor there. Let's exit. We're out of the playoffs now, obviously thanks to us giving up the game. And now we're going to end up declining the combine, and we're going to end up seeing where we end up getting drafted. My guess is it would end up being round 20. It's possible it might be a little bit higher, but again, we'll find out in just one moment. And now let's see if our hypothesis is true. Do we end up going in the 20th round? We do, and we go to the Colorado Rockies as well. Again, it doesn't really matter what franchise we end up going to, just the fact that we went in the 20th round kind of proves our hypothesis right. Now, we will end up testing it again with the two-way player as well and see if it's the same way, but if you don't end up going to the combine, it looks like you go on the lower end of what your range is, and if you end up going to the combine, depending on how you do, that's going to improve it, or at least put you on the upper end of that one range. And after a horrible start and an 0 for 4 performance with 4 strikeouts, I think we can definitely confirm that Fullerton is probably the worst team in the game and the one that's always going to give you some interest no matter how you do in these. But after losing the state championship again, as you can see up there, our projected round is 9-20, which pretty much draws the conclusion that not only can you not go undrafted, but your floor is going to be round 20. And after skipping the combine, it looks like we're going to be drafted in the 20th round to the Colorado Rockies. So, I think we can draw a handful of conclusions here. The first one being, as I mentioned just a moment ago, that not only can you not go undrafted, but your floor and your minimum round that you're going to get drafted in is going to be round 20. Number two, Fullerton is definitely considered the worst college in this game because every single time that we went out there, Fullerton was the first team to come speak to us. Yes, there were a couple times where we got interest from TCU, but for the most part, it really was just Fullerton. And number three, the combine really is there to just improve your draft stock. If you choose not to go, you're going to go on the lower end of the range that they end up giving you. And if you do end up going, for the most part, you are going to end up going a little bit higher than you would expect. Like you saw right there, we ended up doing horrible throughout, and even if we ended up going to the combine and doing horrible as well, we usually went in the 18th round, whereas if we didn't go at all, we went in the 20th round. A couple other little things too is that as a starting pitcher, no matter how horrible you do in high school or at the combine, you're staying out there for 80 pitches minimum. As you saw, we ended up giving up 40, 50 runs sometimes, but always at that 80 pitch mark, coach decided to take us out. Now, as a reliever, if you were out there in the top half of the inning and really there's no limit to them getting runs, for the most part, it looks like you're going to stay out there. I mean, it might have been a bug for us where we stayed out there beyond 120 pitches, but until proven otherwise, that's what I'm going to assume it's going to be. You really want to go out there when you're in the bottom half of the inning if you really want to go out there and throw it. Not that you necessarily would want to, but if that is the case, be prepared to be out there for quite a while because you're going to be throwing over 100 pitches. And lastly, it does look like college is there to only help you out as well. Now, is it possible that you do really well in high school and then do horrible in college and it ruins your draft stock? Absolutely. But if you have a really horrible high school career, going to college is only going to help you out. You saw in the one where we ended up going to college, it improved us by a couple of rounds. So we didn't go in the 18th. We went a couple rounds higher in the draft. So again, if you really want to improve your draft stock, if you did horrible in high school, college is definitely the route to go. And also, if you're trying to go for that number one spot and try to be the number one pick in the draft, you definitely want to go to the combine. Now, is it possible to get the number one pick after going to college? I'm sure that there is a very good possibility, but again, that's something that we might test in the future. So if you guys want to see that, guys, let me know down in the comments. As a matter of fact, 100 likes on this video, and we'll do a video where we do what we can to be able to get the number one pick in the draft. But thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to go down and drop a like. If you're new, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.